sec.
Them snake have no feelings. They don't bite up anything. I hear they bite up the money and have the country in jeopardy. They bite up the pipeline. No water for the swine. I don't know what they will do next. They bite up a whole race
No,
of
you want to make
complex.
sure you can record
Snake
it.
in the valley say. Snake in the valley
This
say.
is Curriculum Live.
Snake in the valley say. And the biting hard. Snake in the valley say. I'm sorry for Trinidad. I'm there, I'm a hammer. Who I am, who I am, who I am.
National Writing Program. Yes. A week, I guess. At least that are the foods. When I saw porn when I was I only see it like
Well, they're playing bad. They have me feeling sad. Well, they're playing beat.
my God,
When they run for police, then criminal attack me outside them, me rama. Way down Henry Street by H.C. and Walker. About 10 in the night on the 5th of October.
I have to talk.
They say how I pushed the girl from Grenada. I said the leader of the gang was hot like a pepper. And every man in the gang had a white hand razor. Well, I back until the lily fall in the gutter. When you see my position and the police in the area.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
Hello.
Recording. Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. Hi, my name is Melanie. I'm the Senior Director of Public Programming here at the Center for Fiction. This is the 6th year that we are collaborating with the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival, which is also our 6th year in Brooklyn. It's been one of the highlights of my working here to work with Marcia, Melanie, and Melissa. Let's see, how many of you have been to the Center for Fiction before? Okay, great. So I don't know if you know this, but we have a floor above us. It's our member floor, and it's also home to another part of our library collection. Some of it is here, and we have a curated Caribbean literature section, thanks to the Caribbean Literary Festival. So if you want to do a deep dive into Caribbean literature at a library, you can become a member and read in what I call the nicest living room that none of us will ever have in New York City upstairs. Let me see if there's anything. There will be, I think there's a Q&A. And so just raise your hand and somebody will bring you a microphone because we are live streaming this as well. And that way everybody on the live stream can hear you. And it's now my pleasure to bring up Marcia, one of the other M's, founder of the Caribbean Literary Festival. Marcia.
Pages have no numbers.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my personal goal is to have everyone as repeat attendees. So like the very first time I give an introduction, I never have to do it again. So the point is that when we have 11 events, you'll just be rolling over to all of them with us. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the third day of Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival 2024. It is my extreme personal honor, and it's the honor of my team, the other two M's, Melissa and Melanie, to present a huge moment in the movement of stories between the diaspora and, and the region and home. When we started this journey 6 years ago, we had no idea that we would become a bridge for the movement of those stories. We kind of existed to create a space to elevate writers in the diaspora, give them the confidence to write from the lens of their heritage. And we had no idea that we would eventually be flummoxed with entries from the people who live in the region. Today's event is a testament to the work that we have been doing and the connections that we have been making to make that possible. And when Lisa, who is a personal friend of mine, and I respect her and admire her, Lisa actually went to the high school that I attended, and so did the other two M's. So we went to Bishop Anstey High School. Lisa was a couple years ahead of us. So I had known Lisa in her writing way before we had met. At the Vox, I'd followed her career. Lisa has always been very candid about the elements of her life. You know, she had become a mother very early on in her life, and I remember looking at Lisa as an emblem of possibility, like looking at Lisa as an emblem of resilience. No one wants to be resilient, but life calls on us to be resilient, and Lisa has done so with grace, and Lisa has done so with a temerity that I admire and I hold very closely to me. So while this is a Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival event, it is a personal achievement for me, and I hope Lisa feels our love that we have poured into this as we honor her latest book baby, Death in the Dry River. And if things couldn't get any better than that, when we reached out to Mr. Dexter Gabriel, P. Jelly Clark, to do the honor of lifting up Lisa's book, and he's as mysterious as his pen name, and we have no phone number. We only communicate via email. When we shot him the request to partner or to do the conversation with Lisa and understand the dynamic, right? Like we have a writer at home and we're here in New York, like where everybody wants to write and be. And someone of his stature says, I will present that conversation. I will take the back seat so that Lisa can be bigger than me in that moment. It was mind blowing. I respect Jelly's work because he writes and he reimagines what yesterday looked like with Black people there. He writes our stories in between the lines. He reaches all the way back into Trinidadian folklore. He reaches all the way back into our wounds, and he shows all of the beauties, and he shows a new world, and he imagines past worlds full of possibilities, and where we are the protagonists, where we are the center, where we are not the depraved, where we are not the ones who are taken advantage of, but we are the victors. So he's Trinidadian by extension, or you were raised in Trinidad for a little bit, right? Um, and he flies blackness so high in all of his novels, and he has a very keen understanding of Trinidadian history because he's a historian. So the pairing, and I hope that you also realize that we're very intentional about the pairings. When we put an event together, we hope that you read between the lines. When we play a song or we curate a playlist, we hope that it matches in some way the theme, what the writers represent. So this is a really special pairing, and this is Lisa's moment. And would you please put your hands together to welcome both of them to the BCLF 2024 with me? I don't like, sometimes I read bios, I feel like people tell on themselves without a bio. So without further ado, they're going to mute me, and Lisa and Jelly will take the stage.
Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Okay. Hello, Brooklyn. It's great to be back. I left Brooklyn about 10 years ago. I used to live not too far from here. My cousin owns a brownstone in Park Slope, and it's just amazing how things have grown. Like this wasn't here when I left. There's an Apple store. There's a Trader Joe's on Flatbush. Like I was like, how did that happen? I met my wife here at Brooklyn Moon. Cake Man Raven is gone, but I see there's a lot of new stuff, and all of you are still here, so that's the great thing. So thank you for coming out on this Saturday. Always great for me to come from, I live in Connecticut now, the forgotten tri-state. So made my way down here, and it's great to be here, especially here with this phenomenal author. And I'm going to read your bio from my trusty phone. And so I will go ahead and read your bio to introduce you for those you don't know. Lisa Allen Agostini is a writer and editor from Trinidad and Tobago. I didn't say Tobago. They do that all the time to me. She's the author of the historical noir novellas Death in the Dry River, which we're going to talk about a lot today, the YA novel Home Home, and the domestic noir novel The Bread and the Devil Need, which was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. She's currently working on a memoir in poetry and a novel set in the world of steel pan, the national instrument of her homeland. And you are also, as I hear, a fellow in residency.
Yeah, so on Monday, gone, I began, sorry, I began the International Writing Program Fellowship at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. So I'm one of like 35 or something international writers, publishers, editors, translators, poets, playwrights, you name it, who are going to be there for 11 weeks doing all the things, hopefully. Well, essentially, it's a writing residency, so you get to sit and write. But there are also readings in the community. Iowa City is huge for literature. Like their poems and sculptures of poets and things. I was like, what?
I thought they were just corn.
Also corn and writers.
And yes, corn and writers.
And young athletes in very small, sorry.
In small shorts, yeah. I know. It's Iowa, but no, that's great. Look, when I came, my first remembrance of coming to the United States is coming to Brooklyn from Trinidad. I don't know what it would have been like if I ended up coming to Iowa. That would have been a really different story. And so I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. I am so far.
Yes. And so, okay, so we're here today to talk about you, but especially this new novella you have out, this phenomenal novella. I read it in one sitting, couldn't put it down. Death in the Dry River. And so, we're here to talk about this. And you know what? I'm going to read your synopsis from the back, just so people, for those of you who haven't, so I hope I get you wanted to read it. When Police Constable Johnson Sunnystone stumbles upon a murdered man's corpse in the filthy dry river on the edge of Port of Spain, Trinidad, he unwittingly opens a case involving calypso, conspiracy, and corruption. I like the alliteration. It is 1932, so we're going back. That's why they have all that old-time calypso they've been playing here. African chattel slavery and Indian indentureship are over, but neither has been left behind. British colonial Port of Spain is a roiling pot of disparate races, classes, and agendas. The rich take what they want, the gangsters take what they need, and the poor take whatever's left. That's good. That's good stuff. Depressed, yeah. Whoever wrote it is good. Depressed by his wife's leaving him and suspended from the constabulary for insubordination, Sunnystone is drawn into an investigation that searches every corner of the city. His goal, solve the case no matter where it ends or who it destroys. Yeah, you guys have to get this book. They have a whole lot of them selling. Make sure you pick one up before you leave. All right, so, I just wanted to ask you a few questions as we go through, and hopefully we can just have a conversation. But, just first of all, opening up, I get this a lot, and I'm always interested to know it as well. When did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I've been writing since I was before I begin,
Yeah.
may I just say what an honor and a pleasure it is to be here, and what an amazing little festival this is. I know I keep saying a little festival, but it's little but a talawa, and I know by and by it's going to be huge, and I'm just looking forward to that day. I'm here for it. So congratulations to the organizers, and thank you for having me. Thank you for interviewing me. Thank God for being here. Thank you for my publisher, my friends, my family, my support, my fellow writers, and to the amazing, lovely Dominic Calafasad, who was once my editor, who was my editor at the Trinidad Guardian while I was plodding away at this thing. So, yeah, I've been a writer since I was a small child.
Okay.
Um, I remember journaling uh, about how much I loved the song Delirious by Prince. So if you can date that song, that's the year I decided I wanted to be a
Okay.
writer. But I was little, and I've always written. My sister's here, so she could testify. I've always written, and I think maybe briefly I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a nun, no. Oh, maybe I want to be a nurse, no. And yeah, that's it.
So what was your journey like then entering this world? Because you said you were always writing, you were always interested. What was your journey like from that interest to you actually saying, look, I have printed words in a book and other people want to read it?
Well, it's always been like that. When I was in Standard 5, in the valedictory function as we left primary school, I slight plagiarized, but kind of also maybe adapted a skit from this, like because we were trying to learn the metric system, there was a little skit in one of the textbooks about the metric system, and I adapted it. And so we performed it in my valedictory function when I was in, right, primary school. And I went into Bishop's, as Marsha said. I used to write on folder paper, little stories, little love stories with children in school and thing, and pass them out. So we had like, it used to be a page at a time, obviously. So it was in high demand.
Did you charge for it?
No.
Did you make money?
I still don't make money. But I love the idea of sharing stories, and other kids would be like, when is the next one coming? And that is a powerful feeling that you can tell stories, and people want to hear these stories. I've always loved that. And so, yeah, this is pretty much, that was the start.
You're building your brand in a way.
Yeah, and I say self-published, but actually my publisher for this book is Kaifel Agostini. Last name might sound familiar, it's because he was my first husband, but we were friends for a long time before, and we remained friends afterwards. And one of the things that he did when he was my boyfriend when I was a teenager was help me self-publish a book of poetry when I was 18. And so, yeah, so that was my first sort of foray into the idea of publication. And I swore I would never self-publish again. It's too hard. Yeah. But
Okay. Yeah. Well, now here you are. So, like you were talking about your plagiarism in the beginning. Look, I don't think
Adaptation.
I don't think there's a single writer who, when you first started out, when you were small, weren't trying to mimic your favorite writer or your favorite. That's classic. Who were some of your favorite writers when you were younger?
I distinctly remember eating up Sam Salvan's collection. Oh gosh, Ways of Sunlight. Ways of Sunlight. Ways of Sunlight. Loving that. The characters just were like, yummy. But I read everything. I read mythology, Greek and Roman mythology, French textbooks, whatever. And so it was more or less whatever was available. So I don't know that I had a favorite writer. My big sister, and they used to read a lot of Sidney Sheldon, Joan Collins, Erica Jung, Fair Flying. Just saying. I read everything, and so I don't know that I had a favorite writer. As I came up, though, Alice Walker became one of my absolute favorite writers. I had everything that she wrote,
Right.
But
So in talk, I like talking about the nostalgia of how we came into writing and everything. And so every writer I know, everybody is influenced, of course, by that past and where they grew up. Everybody, they tend to situate things where they grow up, or they put little things. So, talk about where you grew up exactly and how you think that's influenced your writing.
I grew up from the age of about 2 in Mova Junction, in which is so Mova is a working class suburb of Port of Spain. So if you ever hear about Laventil, Mova is the neighbor, right? And so, I grew up in Mova. My dad was a businessman, an entrepreneur. My mom worked with him as a chief cook and bottle washer kind of thing. Uh, I went to Lower Mova Government School, and so the elements of those aspects, I mean, I carry them with me. I talk like if I'm from Mova. That's my native accent. If you hear me speaking standard, I'm doing it for you. um, and the bishop's accent. Bishops. Yeah. So, but I carry these things with me, and you see it in the books.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Mova and Laventil people, in the pages, whether or not they identify as such, they are pretty much. And I think that a lot of my writing is an exploration of the past that I don't know about. I think our family is not great at talking about the past and our family history. So a lot of it I just kind of make up and try to figure out what it might have been like.
West Indian families not talking about the past and holding secrets? No, you got to be kidding me. Not our open families. I won't even go into finding out what relatives you had later on. Anyway, so thank you for all of that. Let's get to talking about this book, this fantastic book, Death in the Dry River. This book is a crime story, what is often called noir fiction, right? But as you readily acknowledge, most of these stories aren't set in Trinidad, right? We always get a story, it's set somewhere in rainy New York or something like that in the 1930s, or the Caribbean at all. So how do you think the genre is changed by this less common setting that you've chosen? What can the Caribbean in many ways bring to crime fiction you believe that's been lacking?
Well, I don't want to make it seem like I'm the only Caribbean person who's ever written a crime story, right? There are a couple of people who have. Sorry, bad with names, not going to call them because I'm just going to mess them up. But you know who you are. And I applaud you as trailblazers. As I said, I wrote this when so it was like 2005, and my mom had passed in 2004. And around that time, I was reading a lot of Walter Mosley. So Walter Mosley is a Black American writer, and he has created a character called Easy Rawlins.
Easy Rawlins.
I love me an Easy Rawlins.
That's a
Easy.
mouth.
If you've ever heard of the Denzel Washington
Yeah.
film Devil in a Blue Dress, and if you haven't, go look it up. It's great. Devil in a Blue Dress is a story that uses this Black detective in a Black community, Black victims, I mean, it's just Black. Like, might have a token white people somewhere in there, but it's a Black story. And I really loved, he has several of these books. It's a series of these books. And I was obsessed with them. Thanks to the National Library, I was able to borrow them and read them. And I thought my mom, when she was a child, spent time on Duke Street in Port of Spain, right? She always said that. But I didn't have any concept of who she lived with, why she was on Duke Street, what it had in Duke Street. So I think after she passed, this impulse to kind of dig up and figure out what was that place like, what it might have been like to live in Duke Street when my mother was a child. And so it started there, and the characters sort of blossomed from that. What was the original question? I got so distracted.
I think you're doing a good job on it. Yeah.
So what I think that this work brings is that sense of the detective as being a part of the community, and that we are right. So it is kind of writing ourselves into the literary world, if that makes sense. In the same way that when we, as people of color, write science fiction, speculative fiction, and ghosts, which are considered very white spaces in literature, that we are colorizing the people thing. So I would like to,
Colorizing instead of colonizing. I like that.
so that we are, you know, putting ourselves into, into the discourse, which is important.
Yeah.
You know, some people are like, no, why do we need to be a part of the discourse? Let's have our own discourse. That's not how the world works. Let's mix the thing up and, find out what is it that we in the Caribbean bring that is unique. And I'd like to think that this is a very Caribbean story told through a very Caribbean eye, and changing this.
It has that feel throughout, and I think I told you that when I was reading this. You know that you're not in New York. You're well aware that you're not somewhere in London or something like that. You know you're here. So one of the things you do so well here with this, and this is world building. People often ask me about world building because I do science fiction. It's like I said, but world building is in any writing, and you build this world in here. And so I could tell in reading this took a lot of research. All right, and so I want if you could talk about the research that went in. Did you go down to the National Archives?
I sure did not.
But they're so helpful. I mean, I've been to the National Archives and Trinidad several times for my own research, and they
So a little background.
it's not. It's not that. Look, I got a lot of help. It was not. I've been to places in the Caribbean that were more difficult, and I don't want to name any names, Barbados, but I've been places like that, and Trinidad wasn't so bad. So how did you go about doing your research?
Well, just to answer the National Archives thing first, and not to plug my other work, but Trinidad Noir is a collection that I co-edited.
Yes.
And there's a story. Oh, thank you. We love that this book is still in print.
Yes.
Bless the Lord. Look at the dates. God is so good.
Yeah.
There's a story in it by a Trinidadian writer called Robert Antoni called How to Make Photocopies in the National Archive. And I encourage you to read it. And after you've read it, you will never go and do nothing in the National Archive. You can pass that
I
place
just
like a
want
full
to
bus.
I just want to make certain, as a historian, I'm not disparaging the National Archives. I will need your archives again. So any of you are listening or this video reaches anyone, I love you guys. You were very helpful. I thank you in my book. Thank you.
No, and of course, the service is necessary. It's a necessary service. It's just that the way it's set up is not approachable, it's not user-friendly, and we could probably figure out a better way to do it. But what I did was, I'm a town girl, and the first thing I say is how I was grateful to the National Library for being able to borrow all those books, those Walter Mosley books. The Guardian, where I used to work, here, the library here. So I found it very easy to go into the National Library, into the Heritage Library, and they have files that you can photocopy, touch, take all the pictures you want, everything. And I also, because I'm a UE St. Augustine graduate, and St. Augustine, I use the Alma Jordan Libraries, it used to be called West Indiana, it's now called West Indiana Special Collections Division, and they were extremely helpful as well. So those were my primary, also the Police Museum, which the late, God rest his soul, Jerry Besson set up. There's a police museum in Port of Spain that looks at the history of policing in Trinidad and Tobago. And obviously, because the main character is a policeman, and one of the key plot points is the fact that he is suspended from work, I had to know how police function, how they worked within the community, and so those were my primary research sources and books like Olga Mavrogado's Voices in the Street is a really good book to look at the history of Trinidad. Of course, Bridget Burton, history of modern Trinidad. Um, and yeah, those are off the top of my head. Um, Rhoda, Rhoda Reddock's research as well into um, women's land ownership and income, because we have this idea that women in the Caribbean have the same narrative, or women of color in the Caribbean have the same narrative as the international narrative that is told by feminist historians about women not being able to earn money, and that's not true necessarily for Caribbean women, because we were enslaved and indentured right alongside the men, and we worked just as hard. We probably made less money, but we worked just as hard. And after indentureship and after emancipation, we continued to do that, and we continued to spend our money on our families and invest in our communities and so on. So, yeah. What was the question?
No, you answered it perfectly. Yeah, you're doing a fine job. Yeah, so yeah, so Bridget Burton, by the way, when I was in grad school working on my dissertation, I wrote her to ask a question, and her exact email back to me was, "If you had read my book," and I knew from there it was not going to get any better. But she's a great person. I saw her this summer, and I told her that story, and she laughed. Um, So, talking about research, so certainly you talk about going and finding books on research and all that, but as a historian, certainly I rely on those. But as you know, a lot of the stories we know about the past, anywhere, but also in the Caribbean, are passed down stories. We are stories that are passed down to us. They may not always be exactly correct, they are different people's perspectives, but you talk about, and you just mentioned about how your mother has these memories, right, of this earlier time on Duke Street and so forth. So, how did passed down memories, did her memories or other people's memories or stories, did any of that figure into your research?
So here's the thing,
when you
right?
did it, yeah.
So our grandmother, I don't know if you're familiar with the spiritual Baptist faith in Trinidad and Tobago. Our grandmother was spiritual Baptist, but our grandmother was also Syrian and Spanish. I'm dark with kinky hair. My grandmother, I say this, and my family's always, she wasn't white. Look, in Trinidad, in Mova and Barataria, she was white. And but she was spiritual Baptist. I didn't see my grandmother here ever. You know what I mean? Even in her house, she slept with her head to everything. She was covered at all times. She used to have her prayers on her birthday for 11th of August every year. She was Baptist of the Baptists. And I think the friend that my mother stayed with was Baptist I think. I ain't sure. But in my memory, imagination, whatever it was, so that you'll find in the story, there's a Baptist link. So during that time, Baptists were illegal. Spiritual Baptists were illegal. Shelter Baptists were illegal. Orisha people were illegal. And so that part of the story, I don't know how my grandmother became Baptist. I do not know, because her whole family was Catholic. And I don't know how she became spiritual Baptist. I know she used to work as a waitress in Port of Spain. And at some time during that point, her name went from Susanna to Lucille. Right? And she went from Catholic to spiritual Baptist. And somewhere along the line, she make a little Douglai baby. I don't know the details, but I sure could imagine stuff, and some of it is in here, I guess. Yeah. But it's not that sort of one-to-one thing. There's a line somewhere in the book that talks about the actual, like the cobbles on the road, right? Which is steel pan law, because steel pan clash, right? Okay, so in Trinidad we have these things called steel bands, And when they were first being formed after World War II, in that pre-independence moment, they were basically street. They were like community organizations slash street gangs, and so they would have war. And what you would do is, because the road was cobble and the sidewalk was cobble, they would loosen the stone. So when they pass in, they have the weapon. You understand? They would loosen it pre engagement, and then when war call, and you're reaching for your stone, So maybe not like direct. I heard this from my mother. I sure didn't hear this from my mother. Mommy didn't used to tell me nothing. Or my grandmother, nothing. But that kind of filling in what little you know with some other parts of what else you've heard,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it works for me.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I hope sometime before this ends, they can play Lord Blakey's Steel Band Clash, so we can hear all about that. But this is a good segue to talk about what your book is at the heart about, crime, right? And so, you know that crime is a powerful word with lots of meaning in current day Trinidad. Talk to my cousins and my family, and they can hold forth on crime, right? They are crime statistics. It's like watching an episode of Law and Order every time I talk to them. Yeah, dun dun. They are. It's a national pastime to talk about crime, and sometimes I'll say there's sometimes this nostalgia of a past that was maybe even crime free, right? Or at least I'll say with some people I speak to, right? But as you point out, just even like in talking about steel band and everything else, this was part of. Well, it's long been a part of the culture, long been a part of the country, even wrapped up in some of these things that people idolize and think of as culture, whether the Calypsonians, the steel band, or what have you. So, in your writing about crime in America, was there anything consciously you wanted to explore in doing so, in bringing up this element of crime in this fiction, or you just like, oh, I just want to set a crime fiction? Are you trying to say something a bit more?
I don't know what I was trying to say, but what I ended up saying,
That's one way of putting it.
as we do, get surprised by our own work.
Yeah.
What it ends up doing is looking at the fact that the crime is not driven by the criminals. It's never driven by the criminals. It's driven by the people who pay them, right? And so yeah, and that has not changed. Of course, people will always romanticize, boy, it had a time when this place was nice. But then you hear Brother Valentino singing in his very dystopian, very, very, very discordant song, This Place Nice. If you don't know the song, go look it up. It's by Brother Valentino, This Place Nice. And he sings, Trinidad is nice, Trinidad is a paradise. But the whole song is about all the social ills. All of the crime, corruption, hungry children, but the place nice. So we always remember a kind of a version that never had crime. Never. What, this place? No. You could have walked down the road good. Meanwhile, woman getting chopped up, black is white, This place nice. Trinidad's a paradise.
I like to see you get a song too with the whole interview. You didn't know you were going to get all that. And so part of this, I want to talk about world building in your book. I mentioned it before. Your book is very deft at world building with a lot of memorable characters and places. Some that stand out to me, of course, are Sonny, Glass. By the way, I love the fact that you only give his name one time. His name is Bobby Glass Hackett, and after that, he's just Glass, right? And I like that because that's part of the world building. You're bringing in these cultural elements of nicknames and everything else that people understand. And so I guess if you can talk a bit about building the world here. And I know for you, the answer might be, well, this world was built on what I know. Even if that's the answer, talk about a bit about this world building and how in creating this world in the way you did, by bringing these cultural elements, by laying out this landscape, how that helped you really give it this narrator's voice that you want to give it.
I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we started like late, so I don't know what time they want us to be done. Huh? Yeah, so keep going.
Right. So let me just be clear. So you want me to talk about my approach to world building?
Sure.
Is that what you want me to talk about?
Sure. Please go ahead.
Okay.
I make it easy. Go ahead.
Okay, so who's down with OCD? Yeah, you know me. To describe the thing, I describe the thing, like in real detail. And when I edit, I try to cut back, but you know, more or less, I don't know. I don't know how successful, but this is the word I was looking for is palimpsest, the thing that you kind of place over something else, right?
Palimpsest.
Yes, cest. Thank you. Our Port of Spain, the contemporary Port of Spain, is laid underneath as in my imagination. But you can walk the streets in this book in today's Port of Spain. Like you can make your way from his apartment on Duke Street to the Dry River, back to the apartment of Frederick Street, down to by the where they catch the tram, over to the Savannah. You could go Woodbrook. You could go. The city is there, so that you can. So in that sense, I'm not building from scratch.
Right.
I'm building on something that already exists. But at the same time, the Duke Street that he lived on had a Chinese fellow by the corner selling opium by license because it was legal at that time. You knew this?
Yeah, of course.
Right, okay. And ganja and thing. It was legal at that time. Well, maybe you could still find a Chinese man by the corner selling ganja. I don't know. It is possible.
I find a lot of people are selling a lot of things.
It's possible, but basically, my intention was to show the city as like looking at photographs and trying to describe what I see in the photographs, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that was my approach to it.
And what you end up with is this really rich world that is very diverse. And I saw that, and it seemed, I mean, this is a novella, right? And in writing a novella, I'm going to harp here on world building because you have to understand, when you are trying to build a world in something this small, that is a skill. To be able in this small amount to give so much. And you really do that in here. Like when I'm, like you said, I feel myself walking down the street. I meet so many different characters. And this is such a diverse world. And so this is intentional. I'm sure, like you said, it's the world that existed. But there are ways that people could have written this and not touched on every person who's working. And I go here to the rum shop and I meet this person. I meet these people are of mixed race. And this is the man from China. These are people from South Asia. And it seems like this is intentional, that you, even Sonny himself, his background, that you want to basically put this stamp and understand that Trinidad is this melting pot in its own way of all these different people. Don't always get along well, but it is certainly this melting pot. And so I just wanted you to talk about the importance of that, you thought, in bringing this out for this book.
I find it hard to imagine inside people's heads. It's easier for me to write about something that I could see, smell, touch, taste, whatever. So that's what he does. You look, you will see him meeting people and basically describe the fella he meet.
Yeah.
So if I was writing about, coming to this room, I'd be like, describe you. I don't know what's going on in your head, but I could say that you come back so. Yeah. And that tells me something, you know what I mean? So so from that perspective, I mean, I guess that is kind of what I do. But I want to say too that I'm not, you say it's a great skill and I hear you, thank you. But
and people applaud it, so you can't take it back.
No, I ain't saying take it back. I'm just pointing out, this lady watching me in my face and she's like super, and her books are short as well. Diana Macaulay from Jamaica. If you don't know Diana, you sleeping. Wake up. Her work is amazing and her world building is fine. And she's actually imagined things, not like me, take a map of tongue and say, oh, she actually like creates whole worlds, and I really admire her work. So I just want to say that it is something that many of us many of us have done well.
Well, you do it well as well. So you have to take those compliments. So I want to get some audience questions. So I have about two more before. Is that fine? About two more questions before I can start the audience questions. You guys fine? About two more questions before I start the audience questions. Okay. Oh, okay. People gonna get hungry. All right.
Hungry for literature.
They gonna get hangry. Is what they're gonna get. So okay, let's talk about Calypso since this is Calypso. Okay, let's talk about it. Calypso, and to be clear, Calypso song sits at the heart of this narrative. I'm gonna leave it up to you and how much you want to give away about this. Trinidad's cultural history is so tied up to Calypso, especially the larger-than-life Calypsonians with their sobriquets, Lord and Mighty and everything else. I want to know, is that, why did you want to make it? Why did you want to make Calypsonians and especially Calypso central to your story?
When you say want to, I mean, I don't know.
We're gonna investigate. We're gonna investigate why you do the things you do. This is, by the way, this is my wife. She asks me this all the time. Why do you want these things? I don't know why. She says, well, explore it more. So now I'm trying to get you to explore it.
Come
Yeah.
on, Fenderson. All right. When I was in my early 20s, maybe just on the cusp of, I just had my first daughter. My brother and I did a research project for WeFM 96.1, where we did research into Calypso history. And one of the interesting things that I discovered is that the early Calypsonians performed behind a kind of like a fence, like a paling. I don't know what to call it. And you would basically only see them from here. And what is happening is that the Calypsonians were so poor, they couldn't afford suits. They would have a jacket that they get from somebody in the tent, and the pants either in a mess or it just not, So they could get a jacket and maybe a shirt and tie, the hat. But the whole suit is not, you know what I mean? It's not presentable. So that they would perform behind this thing and you'd only see the top half. And when this guy, this Calypsonian, turns up dead in the dry river, he is well dressed in a shark skin suit. And ask me why it's a shark skin suit. Why? Because my mother get married in a
shark skin suit.
I'll call back to mommy there. So Calypso has never really been respectable. Calypsonians have never really been respectable. And this one, to present with this fancy suit, dead in the dry river with a really expensive looking jewel on his hand, brings up all kinds of like questions. How he get his suit? Where he get the ring? Where, so that was part of it. I don't know why I chose to kill a Calypsonian. I'm sorry.
You killed him very well. That's what
Aww.
I said. Right?
Thanks. He died for a good cause.
He died for a good cause.
But I want to talk about the Calypso in the story a little bit.
Please.
Now, my impulse is to do a spoiler alert. So I'll tell you that.
You got some close houses in their ears.
I wrote a little Calypso for the Calypsonian.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I haven't written the tune. So I want to encourage you all, when you read the book, if you get a tune for it, by all means, sing it, upload it. I want to hear your tune. Please. I want to hear the tune.
Interactive storytelling.
Seriously. Yeah. So it begins, I get a little piece of chorus. Just now, wait. Me, you never see such a thing. The black cock beat the white cock in the ring. Me, you never see such a thing as when the black cock beat the white cock in the ring. The governor was a man who liked fighting cock. He cock white and small, but it had a loud squawk. One day, his wife bring another cock home. A fine black cock with a big coxcomb. The white cock gets in the ring and rear up, but the black cock beat him before a minute up. You never see such a scandalous thing. The governor wife gave the black cock everything. So I'd like a tune, please, Walia.
That is a fascinating song about chickens.
It's great! It's great!
I'm glad you have such a respect for chickens
important.
to
Animal
bring them up.
husbandry is
Yes,
very
Alan
important.
Hunt.
Yeah.
The word is double entendre for those who are looking for a word for the day.
Calypso is very much a part of who we are and how we understand ourselves. A lot of Trinidadians only discover their Trinidadianness when they leave the country and find themselves missing doubles, roti, and calypso. You know, I interviewed this guy, George, I think it's George Joseph, I can't remember. Dominic, help me. He's an Indian Trinidadian who was in Canada, and he had like the world's biggest collection of calypso. Do you know the name? I can't remember. I can't remember if it's George Joseph. I'm bad at names, I did say. But he had the same experience of, he left Trinidad as an Indian. But then when he reached in Canada, he realized he's not an Indian. And he's a Trinidadian. He have Indian heritage, but he's a Trinidadian. And the calypso was such a key part of understanding his Trinidadianness. It's just really wrapped up and woven into our cultural identity in a way like reggae, I guess, for Jamaicans, or yeah. So yeah, I'm just happy that there's a calypso in here.
All right. So the other thing that's at the heart of this, and okay, I got a little deep, and and it ties in. I'm not without giving it away or with the song, colonialism. Right? You've kind of touched on this already. Is also at the heart of this narrative, both the physical manifestations of being a British colony, with this police force, as you point out, which has mostly black policemen, but has a white governing structure, and the power afforded certain people in society based on skin color or who they are, but also other issues of intraracial colorism, how African culture, Shango Baptist, for instance, are perceived, and the struggle to retain aspects of culture in the face of this colonial oppression. I have another here, why you want it. I guess I need to change it up. But could you just talk, instead of saying why you did it, could you talk about the importance you found in talking about colonialism in this story?
Well, but back to the same thing, you know, if you're talking about crime, look, we talk about crime in Trinidad and Tobago as if we don't know who is bringing the drugs in, who is paying the corner boys, who we don't know. Oh my God, really? You mean this boy who only earns $30,000 a year selling one little dime bag of weed? He's the one who brings in the container of cocaine? Shocking. You know? He's the one who is shipping the weed from South America? Shocking. No, he's not. People have to have resources to do these things. And they are not the ones. The boys in Laventille and wherever it is, they are not the ones. But we refuse to believe or we refuse to address these big systemic issues. So it keep coming back again. And so in the colonial days, you would have gangsters, just like anybody else, but the gangster have to have a pass from the police to be able to operate. The gangster have to have some kind of a contact, or else they will lock you up. You know what I mean? And so, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. You know, and colonialism has been a crime. Right? Columbus, she's sailing on his ships. Columbus wasn't a discoverer. Columbus was an invader. He was a murderer. And, you know, people who are holding on to this fantasy of them. Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And because right now we're embroiled in this big debate about taking those ships off of our coat of arms at home and replacing it with the steel pan. For me, it's a no-brainer, because why wouldn't you put on it? Yes, look, they're both I say steel pan was, founded in a lot of some violence in there. But if you're saying that Trinidad, the very name, is a crime, you know what I mean? The people had a good name for the place. Oh, I see 3 hills. I should call it Trinidad. The people had a good name for the place. And he invaded and he came and he killed the place founded on crime. So come and tell me about what we need a crime. Anyway, sorry, I get so.
I see. You even gave Columbus a British accent, which is he's Italian. I like that. You kind of it all came together. And so yeah, so I think it's. I don't want to give it away. It's up to you to give spoilers, but colonialism sits at the heart of this narrative. And when the mystery itself at the end of the day, aha, it's like the Scooby-Doo, you take off the mask, it's colonialism. Colonialism did it. And so I want to wrap up a bit so we do get a chance, because I'm sure everybody has questions to ask. I just want to talk a bit about, there are probably lots of up-and-coming writers out there, perhaps in this audience, those who will see this. And so I asked, what advice would you give, especially to those outside of the mainland U.S. who are maybe writing back home and dreaming of getting published? What kind of advice would you give?
Right. A. Read. B.
Can't do one without the other.
No. Well, I've heard one person told me that she was not really a big reader and she just decided to start writing, and she's like a best-selling author and stuff now, and she was shortlisted for the Women's Prize the same year as me. And though she grew up in a kind of fundamentalist Christian environment where they could only read the Bible, so she actually didn't have access to a lot of books. So, I mean, I guess the Bible is a book, right? So that does count.
If you want to write in a lot of thee, thous, and begats.
Hey. So, but yeah, write, read, and trust. A lot of this is, for me, a lot of this is God. Most of this is, if not all, it is God, because my mission as a storyteller, is to tell stories. But they come kind of through me. So allow source to do its work. SOURCE, not Source the Doubles Man in Curep. Although Source the Doubles Man in Curep, allow him to do his work too. But allow the source to do its work. Get in touch with, your creativity in general, and believe that you could do this thing. It's a lot easier now to get published than it was when I was a young person coming up. And not only are there more outlets for publication, but there are also, I'll leave it at that. There are a lot more outlets for publication. Seek them out, and be persistent. Marlon James' first novel got rejected, he says, 95 times. 95 times. I don't even know if this was ever rejected. No, it was rejected, but not 95. It was rejected a couple of times, and I was like, well, okay. And I put it down, but I'm really bad at rejection. I take rejection very hard. But you kind of have to get a thick skin and keep pushing, If this place say no, they're not taking that, put it somewhere else. It have a million different places to try to get published. And now with the advent of the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival, there's a competition, another competition. And the thing about entering into competitions is that it's not just the publication, it's also hype and something to put on your resume and so on. So just keep pushing, keep trotting, keep pushing. It is not a short walk, it's a long walk. Be patient with yourself. I don't want to tell you don't ever give up, because God knows I give up plenty times. But after you give up, cry and sing and come back, because if you believe that this is your work, do your work, So that's it.
Very good, very powerful. Yeah. I want to talk about something really serious. You brought up doubles now twice. And
I'm not hungry.
You're making me hungry, and I just want you to know that if you plan on going back to Iowa, you're going to have a hard time finding doubles or kurma or anything close, so you
But
you should
fortunately,
stop
I'm an
up
excellent
here.
cook, Fenderson.
Well, oh, good.
And so I can
Well,
make
I
my own
hope
doubles
you
if I
bought.
want.
I hope you bought your ingredients too, because you're gonna have a hard time finding that.
I sure
So-
have onions in it. You can make
So I
all
just want to say that. No, but last thing I have on here just to ask is, what are you working on next?
Woo.
Yeah.
Speaking of steel pan,
Uh-oh.
I have a first, well, no, it's actually in second draft now. It's out at my agent. It's with my agent. He's giving it a read. It is not a novella. It's a whole proper big book.
Ooh.
105,000 words. That's the most I've ever written in my whole life. I don't know what happened. It is a contemporary work. It's called Engine Room, and it is set in steel pan. It's about a steel pan family. The family founded a steel pan, so it's the mother, the father dead, the mother have Alzheimer's, and the son and the daughter who are now adults, like mature adults, navigating things like sponsorship, things like the tune of choice, and how, you know, that's a very political kind of decision in a way. Navigating player selection, because the diaspora speaks the home in the steel pan world. You have people who come to Trinidad to play pan, and some of them get spots in the band when people home don't get the spot. You know, so you have all these kinds of tensions, and not to mention drugs. When I was telling somebody the plot that, you know, the brother on coke, they was like, "Oh, you mean you're talking about?" I was like, "No, dog, it was just a." Or I say, you know, and the player is trans. "Oh, you mean you're talking about?" "No, I don't know, you know, who this and who that. And so it's very contemporary. And one thing I want to point out is that with the permission of David Rudder, I am very honored to be able to use his music throughout the book. So it's not just the title. So it's actually subtitled "A Novel Featuring the Music of David Rudder."
Wow.
So it's very much rooted in the world of steel pan, as so much so that you wouldn't know it had carnival. All you would think is it have panorama. You know nothing about carnival. They ain't jump up in a fete. They nothing. All they doing is going and beat pan, come home, do things, and then go back and beat pan again. It's just pan, you know, in the studio, in the yard, in the pan yard. And yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now, Engine Room. So look out for it, hopefully, God willing,
Please.
soon. And it wants to be a trilogy. So
What?
it wants to be a trilogy, so the second one actually has started fermenting.
Well, you better give it what it wants. All right, thank you so much. We're going to open up now for audience questions. We have a mic that goes around, so if anybody has questions, please raise your hand.
I don't hear it discussed much, and forgive the question if I should apologize. But what is it like for a writer who spends so much time investing in writing a book and the struggle of getting published, and you feel the joy that there it is in print, and then you sell less than 100 books?
I mentioned that my first book was self-published with my writing partner, Kaiful there. I think we printed did we print 100 or 500? We printed 500 copies. When I was 18, I still have copies. I am 50. It's a struggle I know well. But in a sense, I'm not saying money doesn't matter, but money doesn't matter. Just as for your information, money is not a real thing. Don't live your life as though money were the thing to pursue. It is not. That is a lie. Don't believe it. Why are you writing? Are you writing to sell books or to tell a story. If you've told the story unsuccessfully and the book fails, it happens. It might be painful or whatever. You might decide, oh, I'm never going to write another book again. Okay. But the work for me is the important thing. Or else I would have given up at 18 when I was begging. I'm going to say doubles again because I went by the doubles man on Chacon Street and personally tried to sell books there. I did not sell a book. But if it was about that, I would have given up at 18, and I did not. So for me, clearly, it's not the thing. But I have also been very blessed in that all of my books have sold. I am not the greatest, maybe, business person, and I don't negotiate wonderful contracts because getting the story out is always more important to me than getting paid for it. So, yeah, it is a painful truth that books fail sometimes. But what are you gonna do? Quit? Ford, the fella with the car and thing, and right? Something, light bulb, something, right? Right, all you know what I talk about, right? You just gotta keep trying. Yeah, you keep trying.
Whoever has the mic next, yeah.
I didn't really like formulate my question well, but this is a very Trini book. The way it's mapped, the geography of it, like we were talking about the world building, the history of it, the context, the people, the races, the immigration. I love that there's like this Irishman and they're drinking. I love it. But also the language, right? Your dialogue is always so wonderful to read because it feels so real. It feels like this is how people really talk. And for me, the nostalgia of hearing the words of my grandparents and people from the era. So you do map that as well with the dialogue, especially as our language is changing so much. Like every year, I hear kids in Trinidad saying dead ass. I'm like, what? You know, so how do you, if you do anything at all, maintain the authenticity of the language of the time that you're referring to? Like, is it just by memory, or is there work that can be done to, just to kind of fully form the world through language in a time that we've lost language essentially from?
We have documents, huh? We have, I mean, not everything is really like thoroughly documented, but we do have a lot of documents that we can refer to get. And you might find newspaper reports where people are quoted. You might find magazines, things like that. And as we come further down, you'll find film, you'll find so on. So it's out there. We have to just look for it and use it. I don't want to make it seem like it's, something frozen in stone or whatever. Language is always living. It's going to evolve. That's what language does. But I think, yeah, it is important to have an idea of where we came from and what our language would have been earlier. This doesn't have much of the Indian influences in it, and that maybe will change if I do. When I do a sequel for Sunny Stone, and it will be called, well, it wouldn't be, so the original title of the book was Bloodstone because of the ring and because of him. So it was Bloodstone, and then the second one was supposed to be Heart of Stone, about the wife. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. But language is a thing that evolves. We'll see how it works out.
We have room for one. We have time for one more question if anybody has.
Okay, I hope I can make this question short. First, I want to thank you guys for being here. Coming to this festival for the second year is kind of, even as a Jamaican, introducing me to the wider Caribbean. I've traveled a lot in the world, but I've never been to any other Caribbean country. So this festival for me is like Caribbean 101. Having said that, though, the question I want to ask is, I didn't do literature in high school. But I enjoyed reading Naipaul and House of Mr. Biswas, Mystic Monsieur, Miguel Street. And that gave me an insight into what I regard as Indian Trinidadian culture, that literature. And I also read Jared Hussein's Hungry Ghost, which I really loved. Um,
I'm
re-
sorry, could you put the mic right up? Is it,
uh, have you been following me so far?
I'm struggling a little
Because
bit.
I don't think Mike is working.
No, it is. It's working.
Okay. But have you been following me so far?
More or less, I
Yeah.
lost you at
And
the,
so
the
anyway,
end.
so I've been reading this Indian Trinidadian literature, and I don't think I've ever read any. So from listening to you, it sounds like you're writing from an African Trinidadian story. Is that true or false? So
Yes.
is there a dichotomy between Indian Trinidadian literature and African Trinidadian literature? And if this is real, is this a reflection of how the society is divided? Are there two different stories? And is there a common ground for this for the Trinidadian story?
Where are you from, sir?
I'm Jamaican.
Can you
Jamaican.
ask a question like that? Sorry.
Well,
Have you lived in Jamaica?
yes,
Okay. Is there a white Jamaican story and a black Jamaican story?
it is.
Okay, thank you very much. So in Trinidad
But
and
I don't
Tobago,
generalize about people. That's why I'm asking you about the specific example
uh,
of Trinidad. You know.
okay, I don't want to be too
and to share your
combative.
you just don't want to talk about it. Is that it?
So yes, there is okay, there's one story, but even within the one story, your character story, when you are the hero of your story, the story looks different than if you are the villain. If you're telling the story from the perspective of the African person in Trinidad, these Indian people come and they take all the work and they take all the man and they, oh God, and they take all the land and they build a house and they have this, oh, they own Trinidad now, writing from the perspective of the African. If you're writing from the perspective of the Indian, these white people pick we up and drop you in the Caribbean and we didn't have nothing and boy, we scrabble from. Everybody has their own perspective. It's one story. Nobody's is right or wrong or whatever, but they're different perspectives. So just as in the same way I'd say that in Jamaica, there are many different segments of the society and each one's perspective will be unique to them and their circumstance, their history, their lives. So it is one story, but it's just a matter of perspective, right? So a writer like V.S. Naipaul, who left Trinidad at a certain point in history, would have one perspective. Earl Lovelace, who stayed in Trinidad and is still in Trinidad, will have a different one. Naipaul is Indian, Lovelace is African. They'll have the same story, but different perspectives. And I think that is unique. It's not unique. I think that's why literature is important, so that you can see the other side of the story, you know? And where we, the importance of developing your own literature, your own writers, your own books, is so that all the stories can be told, all the perspectives can be shown, rather than if you think about, you know, love and heartbreak, you think Wuthering Heights in England or whatever, you maybe have the possibility for, Stephanie, give me a good book. Give me a good, oh God, you and you teaching literature, give me a good compare. Right, The Farming of Bones, right, by Edwidge
Duncan.
right? So that when we write ourselves into the discussion of international literature, that the perspectives, our perspectives are as valid as anybody else's. And if you bring that down to the microcosm of the national literature, the same thing applies. If it is only a Naipaul you get one side of a story. If it's only a Lovelace you get one side of the story. But let us indeed have Willie Chen. Let us have James Aboud. Let us have Ole Colmo. You know what I mean? Yes, Trinidad Doctor, that's a very funny book, right? White doctor working in Trinidad. Right, you know, keep the more different stories that we can tell, the better, I think.
Well, thank you for this CARICOM meeting that we just had. We're going to have to bring this to a close with a little surprise, yeah?
I get to cut a cake. Oh gosh, I could cut cake with man. Man, come and cut cake with me.
You want me to do it?
All you have to see the book.
Let me take my cutlass and...
Wait. Before you cut it.
Oh, yeah,
now,
you got to see it.
I want to show them the book.
Make sure you take this picture
You could see? All you could see, stand up and watch.
without it.
It's the book cover.
Yeah.
Right. What an honor. You're so sweet. Oh, my book baby. Oh. Thank you.
You sure you want to cut it, or you just want to keep looking?
No, of course I want to cut it. Cake is to eat. It's not to watch.
Let me cut you a piece.
Wait,
Where you
I have
want-
to get my fork. You don't know how to cut a cake? What is wrong with you?
I don't cut. My Tanti does this. That's why.
Exactly, I'm a tanty. Come, Ollie, hold the cake so we can.
So we can cut it. Yeah. Right. You want this one right here, please? Okay.
Look at this.
Look at this. Yeah.
Look. Ollie,
Take
take out a little.
You just want a little piece?
I cut in my cake.
And
I'm sorry, I'm not feeding you. Afraid licks. So you're wild bit man. Thank you.
all right.
I cut a cake.
Nice.
You all, I had prepared a reading, you know. You all want it?
Yep. You have time? Go ahead. Give the reading. Yeah.
Well, it's 1:30. I don't know if you all want it.
Give a short reading. What are they gonna do? They gave you a cake.
A whole cake. 5 minutes? 5 minutes? All right. Well, I'll read from, I'll read from. I'll read chapter 1. Can I stand? Do I have to take this off to stand?
You want to stand at the microphone? See if it's working.
I don't need the mic, but I
Okay.
wanted
Go ahead. You have a microphone, yeah.
Thanks. I want the thing. He opened his eyes to see his hands in his lap covered in blood. Jerking awake, Sonny Stone shot up out of his bentwood rocker to his bare feet. The pool of blood remained on the polished mahogany seat. Not blood, but sunlight sliding through the one pane of red glass above his back window. The sun, high in the mid-afternoon sky, had hit the pane and pushed Sonny into a nightmare, or out of one. Then he recognized a thumping sound. The boys in the yard behind his one-roomed apartment were playing rounders, and his wooden wall was home base. Thump. It was accompanied by a rattle this time, the glass shaking slightly in its leading at the force of a small body crashing into the wall beneath it. Still standing in his dirty white merino and patched khaki pants, Sonny stoops. If all you break my glass, they go have to call police for me today, you know, he said, loud enough to be heard by the boys outside. They giggled. Sonny raised his voice to shout, I say, if all you break my glass. The threat was interrupted by the crash of breaking glass. A battered cork ball, slowed by its collision with the dimpled clear pane beside the red glass, fell to the floor of Sonny's room. It made a gentle bump when it landed on the dull pine floor. Little hooligans! He spun around, thrust his feet into the woolen alpargatas by the single door, and prepared to turn the brass handle. A shard of glass glittered on his left instep. Slowing, he took off the woven sandals one at a time and shook them out carefully before putting them on again. When the door swung open, the boys were gone. Sonny peered down the street just in time to see the last narrow figure fleeing around the corner of George Street. Slamming the door shut behind him, he pelted after the boy. Little bastard, you feel you're getting away, but your mother never make enough money in she whole life to buy that window, Sonny muttered under his breath as he ran, long legs pumping. Someone standing on Duke Street that April day in 1932 would have seen a tall black man in khaki pants and a white vest, his feet in red alpargats, running like the wind behind three little black boys. The two fastest boys peeled away into a yard at the corner of George and Prince Streets, but one, the biggest, kept going, moving as fast as his knobby knees would churn. The walnut shell brown boy took a hard right onto Prince and ran for his life. Sonny was hardly winded. Running, his reflexes took over. He was 15 again and felt the whips of cocoa branches on his face as he ran down a hill in Grand Revere, his bulging calves scraped by weeds and his slender toes squelching in the muck of rotting leaves and flowers on the ground. The boy kept running, skidding in a puddle when his foot slipped into the murky drain beside the cobbled pavement. He scrambled up, never quite stopping, and took off again. This was not Grand Revere, but Port of Spain. The smell Sonny inhaled when he ran past the puddle wasn't the dark, sweet velvet of the bush, but the sharp and acrid smell of rubbish, stagnant water, and piss. They were close to the river. The dry river was a wide, flat, paved canal through which a trickle of water flowed. Its source was the St. Anne's River in the lush hills north of the city. During the dry season, it devolved into a sullen creek, making its way to the Gulf of Paria. Paved only a year earlier, the river's worst excesses of filth were behind it, but Sonny still groaned when he realized the little boy he pursued was heading for the track that would take him into the waterway. "Don't dare jump down in that river, boy," he shouted, knowing even as he did that, the boy planned just that. The woolly head disappeared over the bank. Sonny slowed to a halt, his feet pounding in the dusty brown grass that lined the bank. Peering down, he saw the track, a steep, stony path worn into the side of the river by little boys like the one he was chasing. The track ended about 5 feet above the riverbed, where it gave way to a wall. The boy was nearly gone now. Sonny was on the verge of turning back when he heard a short, high shriek. Little boys, when they're frightened, sound just like little girls. All their incipient manhood blows away like mango flowers in a storm, leaving only a child and his fear. Sonny spotted the boy's dingy red and white striped jersey. The boy had come to a stop about 30 yards away and was cringing against the high wall of the river. "What happened?" Sonny called, instantly forgetting his broken window and his promises of vengeance. "You see a snake?" "It's all right," Sonny shouted, gingerly going down the crumbling path in the bank, leaving a trail of rolling stones behind his red alpargats as he jumped down. "If you leave it, it wouldn't do you nothing." The boy only whimpered. Sonny trotted past the piles of rotting rubbish through which the stubborn trickle of the river ran. A bloated, dead cat, gray fur bristling in the wind, eyes closed to slits. A bag of blackened tomatoes, a soggy brown leather loafer with no sole, an old paper kite, half its bright yellow life gone, a broken Cockspur gold bottle, long emptied of rum. The boy was standing a few feet from a high hump of garbage that looked like a rag picker's bag. Only it wasn't a bag. What looked like rags was a fine sharkskin suit on a man who lay face down in the river in a pool of drying blood. Sonny grabbed the boy and pressed the small, weeping face into his rock-hard belly. Sonny. The slender shoulders shook. "It's all right, boy," He ain't gonna do you nothing. It's all right. They stood there in the hot, fiercely white sun, the boy crying and Sonny thinking. Somebody would have to run to Besson Street to get the inspector, he was thinking. Somebody would have to tell this man's wife or girlfriend or mother that he had met his end in a fine gray sharkskin suit in the dry river. The boy's already swelling hands were sprawled at the body's already swelling hands were sprawled at its sides. Sorry. And Sonny saw with some surprise that one still grasped the neck of a guitar. The guitar itself was black as ebony and shiny, clearly expensive and well taken care of, until somebody had bashed in its back and snapped the fretboard. The broken body of the guitar was a foot away, tethered to the neck by 6 thin strings. The hand on the neck was the color of good cocoa and wore a gold ring, set with a peanut-sized ruby on the pinky. The corpse had naturally curly hair. So shout out to Kevin Baldew sing. He always writes about his naturally curly hair. The corpse had naturally curly hair, still slick with pomade. Small stones and bits of gravel surrounded the body. Come, boy, come. Sonny led the boy away back to the track. Already his small, light brown face was puffy. Tears had made tracks in the ashy dirt on his cheeks. He had fine curly hair growing out of a low haircut. Sonny ruffled it before hoisting the light frame up to the track and pulling himself up behind him. Though the boy's clothes were old and stained, and his black wool short pants were so tight he couldn't close the 2 top buttons. They were a cut above Sonny's clothes. Expensive, he could tell, by the quality of the weave of the jersey and the sturdy stitching of the pants. Yet, the boy was barefoot and looked like he needed another meal a day at least. His collarbones were sharp, and his high cheekbones gave him a gaunt appearance. His thighs were leanly muscled, and his calves nearly non-existent. What is your name, boy? Clarence, sir. His voice, still girlish in his grief, hitched over the last word. Where you living? By you, sir. What? Me and my mother now moving by you, sir. We in the second room in the back. And where your mother now, Clarence? Where she working? She does work there, sir. She does wash for white people. Sonny grunted. He held the boy's shoulder lightly as they trudged back to Duke Street. Just before they passed Duncan Street, Sonny spotted another urchin. Boy, you want to make a penny? The urchin, wearing a threadbare shirt and torn pants, nodded wearily. Go by Besson Street station and tell Inspector McLeod it have something in the dry river he would want to see. Something human. The urchin's eyes widened and he nodded. Without another word, Sonny started walking away. Where my penny? The boy, only 8 at the most, feeling man enough to challenge me, Sonny thought. What happened to the days when children did as they were told? Wait by the river, by the Piccadilly bend, and I will come back and give you. The urchin walked away, breaking into a trot. He stopped and turned around. Who to tell him? What? Who to tell him send the message? He ain't gonna come unless he know who send the message, sir. Tell him Constable Stone. Tell him Constable Johnson Stone. Thank you very much.
I'm pretty certain now our talk has come to an end and someone is coming to
kick us out.
Yeah.
We thank you guys for sticking around for this